Dopamine is involved in movement, memory, pleasure and reward, behaviour and cognition, attention, sleep and arousal, mood, learning. So you imagine, like, if that is not being like processed properly. And then norepinephrine is responsible for alertness, focus, attention, sleep wake cycles, pain tolerance, mood, reaction time, and memory retrieval. So if you think like dopamine is meant to be degraded into norepinephrine, and it, like, this flow is meant to happen like all day every day, it's part of the cycle. So what happens is that dopamine doesn't actually flow into norepinephrine, which is responsible for focus, attention, like sleep and wake cycles, memory retrieval. So like you can sort of start to see, and this picture is so common in ADHD children also, and I'll talk about sort of how that system is impacted in a moment. But it really, really can show you there sort of all of those things will be impacted if this system doesn't flow properly, and it's just because of this one bacteria. I mean, there are other areas of the body, like other things and imbalances that can impact obviously these areas, but Clostridia blocks that, so it makes it like highly inefficient. And then, so when dopamine, obviously, if dopamine isn't being degraded into norepinephrine in a natural way, dopamine builds. So it just increases in the brain. And you would think that that would be helpful because, of course, like we want more dopamine. So we think, because like, you know, especially for ADHD children, the whole point of the medication is to increase dopamine. But actually, if they've got a Clostridial infection, increasing dopamine is so unhelpful. And it's why typically, you know, some children will come to me and they'll say, oh my goodness, we tried, you know, stimulant medication, and they went psychotic. They went off the rails. You know, their symptoms increased by so much. And it's probably because there's a couple of reasons. Yeah, it's because they might already have a... Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
And I see this, and then you'll do an oat test, and I'll move on to the testing later, but you do this test and then they've got a massive Clostridial infection, and it's like, well, all you're doing then is you're feeding like that high dopamine situation. And like I said, we think that, oh well, like, why would that be a problem? Because most of us, like, in, you know, when we first start out, when I first started out with Rose, I was like, oh, we need more dopamine, because the symptoms in our kids lead us to believe, when you Google it, it's like, oh, it's low dopamine, they're seeking dopamine constantly. But most of the time it's because they have this infection, because this is really common, this infection. I see this on, and even people who are listening who work with me will know, I'm like always talking about this bacteria because it comes up so often on the labs that we see, and it's like something that I want to deal with like immediately first because it's so important.
So how to get rid of it? That's where I want to go. I'm like,
yeah.
tell me how?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so with Clostridia, it's one of those things that it has. So what will happen is if you just kill for like a period, it will just come back.
Right.
So the best way of killing Clostridia is actually to pulse the antimicrobial that you're using. So you would do like 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, or something similar, depending on the child and like what else is going on. But the thing that's like most effective, because actually, like when you go in hospital, if you've got a Clostridial infection, they would use really strong antibiotics because it's something they want to get rid of, because they know how much it damages the gut from that perspective. But obviously we know what it does to like the brain, and we'll move on more about that in a minute. But oregano, it's called oregano, and I'll spell it. So it's OREGONAL. I think that's how you spell it, but we can link it.
It's oregano, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
It's not much money. You can just buy it on Amazon.
Yeah, it's really not, and it's P73, and that is so. What I tend to do is I use that and biocidin, and even in like some of the studies, and there's loads of like research around this. They compared like the biocidin and the oregano, if that's how you say it, to the antibiotics, and it was as effective. So you would use like, and the other thing that's really effective at getting rid of Clostridia is you cycle those antimicrobials. Those two is what I typically use, and then really high dose espuladi. And actually, in some kids, I've used just the high dose espuladi and it's cleared it. It's really, really
Wow.
effective. But so normally I do a mixture of like all three of those just to kind of make sure we've like got rid of it. And then the other thing that's like really helpful is bee pollen. I know it sounds silly,
Mm.
but like that I found that in my protocols to be like really, really useful in kind of combating this bacteria. So really like obviously before you, because I don't want to sort of do anything that's sort of not I love the kids and I want to make sure that I'm serving them. And so if you're a parent and you're listening to this, which obviously you probably are, you would need to prep the body first before you did that. I mean, obviously, if you already knew you had Clostridia on labs, you'd probably be working with someone anyway. So maybe you could recommend this to them and they would do a preparation first. So they would make sure the body can eliminate and everything. Because if you did just put these in high doses, your child will likely have quite a severe die-off reaction and it will feel horrible for them. And what die-off is basically where you've killed a lot of bugs in the body. And obviously as things die, they release a lot of toxins. And if your child's body can't process those toxins, it will recirculate and make them feel terrible. And you will see a lot of behavior around that. So if you are going to do this, always make sure that your child's pooing every day, they're drinking lots of water. Always correct the diet first, because obviously you want like a nice foundation of like nutrition before you go into this, so the liver can actually process properly and all of that stuff first. So I just wanted to say that because I don't want people to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna go out and like whack like loads of biocidin and like oregano into my child, and obviously if the body isn't ready, then it won't make them feel very nice. So those are the things that I typically use. And I think if we think about sort of what Clostridia, other things that it can do. So the main reason why having that high dopamine level is very not helpful is because it's basically a neurotoxin in excess. And this is the thing, like you would never think that of dopamine. You're like, it's like the reward chemical. We want like loads of it and like just to like bathe in it. But if it is too high, it's basically like the brain's on fire. It's so reactive. And what it does is it desensitizes the dopamine tract. So it's like, I don't know if anyone knows what insulin resistance is, but it's where basically the blood sugar's high for so long that the cells then your cells become insulin resistant because they won't let sugar in anymore because they're so bathed in it for so long. And this is basically what's happening with like dopamine tracks. So if the dopamine is so high, those receptors become desensitized to dopamine. So then your child will look for reward even more.